So to calculate the common size numbers here for dynequity, what we would do is 351 divided by total assets, always divide by total assets, 2856.6, to get 0.1228. So as a percentage, this would be 12.3, right? Round it off, it's 12.3%. And you write that in here, 12.3%. Now, remember, with liabilities and stockholders' equity, you're also going to divide by total assets. This is the most common mistake students make on the project. Divide everything by total assets. You don't divide by the liabilities by total liabilities. You don't divide by the stockholders' equity items by total stockholders' equity items. Divide everything by total assets. So, for example, current liabilities would be the most common mistake people make in part one of the project, believe it or not. 265.1, this is current liabilities for dynequity, divided by 2856.6 equals, I did that wrong. Try it again. 265.1 divided by, where's the division sign there? There it is. Divided by 2856.6 equals 9.3%. And all of these should add up to 100.0, but sometimes, quite frankly, they're going to have a rounding difference, and that's just life. So if you have a rounding difference, on something like this, you can just fudge it. That's okay. Now, if you look, remember how to calculate the debt ratio? It's total liabilities divided by total assets. All we're doing here is we're dividing everything by total assets. So, for example, with Darden Restaurants, you can see here, these are the debt items, these three. So if you wanted to see the debt ratio, you would just add these three together. So I'll do that right now. 23.9% plus 27.9 plus 12.1 is 63.9%. In decimal form, I shouldn't have to show you this, but I'll show it anyway. That would be 0.639. Which company finances assets primarily with amounts borrowed long term? Yeah, dynequity. Look at dynequity here. The long-term debt is huge. 70.5%.
Should we add the non-recurring liability?
Should you add the what?
Non-recurring liability.
If you want to, but I would just focus on, because they just said, yeah, you could, I guess, but not really. It depends. We specifically picked an example here where dynequity would be the same one way or the other, which is why it's so high. But sometimes yes, sometimes no. The truth is, whenever you're doing this, you just use your judgment, and whoever's judgment is better is going to make more money. That's kind of how it works. So, like, there are different ways to calculate debt ratio or return on assets. My ratios in the book are actually simplified ratios. But I could show you 3 or 4 different ways to calculate debt ratio. Which one is right? You just have to use the same one consistently. But the thing is that if your debt ratio is more accurate, then you're going to get a better result. You're going to make a better investment that way. It'll help you make a better decision, and a better decision, ideally, will help you make more money. Which company finances assets primarily with amounts invested by its shareholders? Nathan's, because look at this contributed capital, it's 97.6%. Which company finances assets primarily with past profits? Darden, because look at the retained earnings over here. Those are some nice retained earnings you got, huh? Never mind. Anything else you see? In this whole analysis? Anything interesting that you see?
Current assets for Nathan's outgoings.
Yeah, look at look at weird numbers here. This is huge. Why does Nathan's have so much current assets? And here's another one for you. Why does DineEquity have so much goodwill? Look at that goodwill at DineEquity. It's more than half of DineEquity's assets are goodwill.
Can it be a plot?
Can it be a what?
A plot.
It's because they made an acquisition. Yeah, you know why?
I was gonna say that Nathan's is because its current assets is because they keep selling like food and stuff, and food is like perishable.
Yeah, but Darden and DineEquity serve food.
I
mean, someone could argue that Applebee's food is long term because it's frozen and it's probably several years old. I don't know. I just made that up. But they all supposedly sell fresh food, right? Or look here, Darden has huge PP&E. Well, what's with that?
maybe because it requires specialized tools or their
I think Darden must own some more of its buildings and stores, whereas Nathan's franchises and DineEquity does more franchising. Well, I think IHOP is not a company owned, right? Now here, this goodwill, this is from when IHOP bought Applebee's. They had a huge amount of goodwill, and that's why their balance sheet here has all this. Anything else you see that looks interesting? The other comparison is just the overall sizes of the balance sheets here. Nathan's is 1/100th the size of Darden. Right? 53 million versus 5.24 billion. All right, great. We made it. We survived. Please, for homework.